Jesus never told people they would live without problems, and that truth alone reveals how honest God is with humanity, because instead of offering illusions of an easy life, Jesus offered something stronger, his presence in the middle of difficulty. From the moment he began teaching, he made it clear that storms would come, opposition would rise, and trials would test every heart. Yet he also made it clear that problems are not proof that God has left, but often proof that faith is being formed. Many people believe that if God loves them, their path should be smooth, but Jesus showed through his own life that love does not remove struggle. It gives strength within it. He walked through rejection, misunderstanding, betrayal, and suffering, not because God abandoned him, but because obedience sometimes leads straight through hardship instead of around it. Jesus revealed that problems are not interruptions to God's plan. They are often instruments within it, shaping patience, humility, endurance, and trust in ways comfort never could. He knew that human hearts often grow complacent in ease but grow deeper in trials, and so he did not promise escape from trouble. He promised victory through it. When the disciples panicked in storms, Jesus did not remove the sea immediately. He calmed it at the right moment, teaching them that fear can be louder than danger and faith can be stronger than both. He showed that the presence of a storm does not mean the absence of God, and that even when waves rise high, his authority remains higher. Many people pray for God to remove their problems, yet Jesus often taught people to pray for strength, wisdom, and faith instead, because a life without challenges would also be a life without growth. Problems reveal what comfort conceals. They expose where trust is weak, where pride is hidden, and where surrender is needed. Jesus understood that trials uncover truth, and truth, though sometimes painful, is always healing when received with humility. He never mocked people for struggling. He met them inside their struggles and showed them that God's compassion is closest to those who feel weakest. He spoke gently to the weary, the burdened, and the discouraged, reminding them that God does not measure their worth by their victories but by their willingness to keep coming back to him. Jesus knew that problems can make people feel forgotten, so he repeatedly reminded them that God sees what others miss. He spoke of a father who notices sparrows, counts hairs, and remembers tears, revealing that no hardship is invisible to heaven. When people felt crushed by guilt, fear, or failure, Jesus did not add more weight. He lifted it, showing that God's desire is restoration, not condemnation. Problems often convince people they are alone, but Jesus showed that loneliness is a feeling, not a fact, because God's presence is not determined by emotion. He taught that faith means trusting God's nearness even when it cannot be felt, and that real peace is not the absence of trouble but the confidence that God is greater than it. Jesus faced people whose lives had been shattered by sickness, loss, rejection, and shame, and he never dismissed their pain. He listened before speaking, healed before teaching, and comforted before correcting, revealing that God's heart is compassionate before it is corrective. He understood that problems can harden hearts or humble them, and he always invited people toward humility, because humility opens doors pride keeps locked. When people asked why suffering existed, Jesus often answered not with explanations but with transformation, showing that God's greatest response to suffering is redemption. He did not promise to explain every trial, but he promised that none would be wasted. Jesus taught that problems can become turning points, moments when direction changes, priorities shift, and truth becomes clearer. Many who met him came because of pain, and they left with purpose, proving that hardship can become the doorway through which grace enters. He warned that the world would bring trouble, yet he also declared that he had overcome the world, giving hope that no problem is stronger than God's power. Jesus understood human fear deeply, and he spoke peace repeatedly, not because danger was imaginary, but because God's authority was real. He showed that courage is not the absence of fear, but trust in God greater than fear. When Peter began sinking in the water, Jesus did not scold him first. He reached for him, demonstrating that God's instinct is rescue, not rejection. Problems often make people feel like they are sinking, yet Jesus shows that one cry of faith is enough for heaven to respond. He never ignored honest cries for help, and he never turned away from sincere seekers. Jesus revealed that some problems exist not to destroy faith but to strengthen it, just as fire refines gold. He compared trials to pruning, a painful process that produces greater fruit, teaching that God sometimes removes what people cling to so they can receive something better. Many resist this process because it feels like loss, yet Jesus showed that surrender always leads to gain in God's kingdom. He lived with no guarantee of comfort. Yet his life overflowed with peace because his trust in the Father never wavered. He showed that peace is not found in perfect circumstances but in perfect trust. When opposition rose against him, he did not panic, he prayed. When pressure surrounded him, he did not complain, he obeyed. When suffering approached, he did not flee, he surrendered. Through every challenge, Jesus demonstrated that problems cannot defeat a heart anchored in God. He revealed that faith is not proven in easy moments but in difficult ones, because anyone can believe when life is smooth, yet trust becomes real when circumstances are hard. Jesus spoke about building life on rock instead of sand, explaining that storms reveal foundations, not create them. Problems do not create weakness, they expose it so it can be healed. He knew that trials strip away illusions and reveal where true security lies. Many build their lives on success, relationships, or control, yet when problems come, those foundations shake. Jesus invited people to build on God instead, because what is built on God stands even when everything else falls. He taught that God's strength is made perfect in human weakness, turning the world's definition of power upside down. In God's kingdom, weakness is not shameful, it is the place where grace enters most clearly. Jesus showed that problems can become testimonies, wounds can become wisdom, and trials can become training. Nothing surrendered to God remains wasted. Even pain can become purpose when placed in His hands. Jesus Himself carried the heaviest burden on the cross, bearing sin, sorrow, and suffering without turning away, proving that God understands human pain from the inside, not from a distance. The cross showed that God does not watch suffering passively, He steps into it personally. When Jesus cried out in anguish, He revealed that faith does not eliminate pain, yet He also revealed that pain does not cancel faith. His resurrection declared that problems never have the final word. Death looked final, darkness looked victorious, and hope looked buried, yet God was still working beyond what anyone could see. The empty tomb became proof that what seems like an ending can be the beginning of something eternal. Jesus showed that no problem is permanent when placed in God's hands, because God specializes in bringing life out of what appears lifeless. After rising, He did not shame His followers for their fear during hardship. He restored them, showing that failure during trials does not disqualify anyone from grace. He entrusted His mission to ordinary people who had struggled, doubted, and stumbled, proving that God works through imperfect hearts willing to trust Him. Jesus continues to speak to people facing problems today, reminding them that difficulty does not define them, despair does not own them, and fear does not control them. He invites the weary to rest, the anxious to trust, and the broken to hope again. He reminds every troubled heart that problems are chapters, not conclusions, and that God is writing a story greater than any struggle. To follow Jesus is not to avoid problems, but to face them with hope, courage, and faith that God is present within them. His message remains steady across time. Troubles will come, but they will not win. Storms will rise, but they will not rule. Darkness will appear, but it will not overcome the light. Jesus stands as God's living promise that no problem is bigger than His love, no pain stronger than His grace, and no trial greater than His power. And for every soul carrying a burden today, His voice still speaks with calm authority, saying, "Do not be afraid, I am with you," and that promise alone is stronger than every problem the world could ever bring.